Welcome to another episode of the Feature Presentation Podcast, where every week we take a deep dive into the trenches of independent filmmaking. I'm your host, Derek Diamond, fresh off finishing my latest short film titled The Feature, which I talked about a couple of weeks ago here on the podcast. So we're all wrapped with that. We're doing some other promotional material on the podcast, have some of the cast and crew on in the coming weeks. But for this week, I'm very excited to be chatting with director Miss Jenn Page. Jenn, how are you?
I am good. I'm doing great. We're here. I don't know why I'm singing that. It's been a very long day. Like, I don't usually stay up this late. I'm only staying up this late for you, Derek.
Well, I appreciate that. I remember when we were setting up the interview, you're like, usually my brain is fried by the time that you do your show. So I appreciate you being flexible with your schedule. And I've been excited, ever since, because I joined your working director Facebook page. And then from there, like instantly I knew that you would be a great fit for this podcast, because as directing is something that I'm really starting to finally dabble into. And the film industry, as you know, is almost like a drug in a way. Like you don't get any other satisfaction quite like when you're on a set and you're making a production happen.
And the rest of the time, fiending for it. Just a little hit. Just give me one little short. Come on.
It's like that, was it the Dave Chappelle meme where he's like, y'all got any more of those film sets or something like that? So yeah, so you know how it is. So I always like to start off the conversations with this. How did you get into the wacky, crazy world of filmmaking?
Well, I started a million years ago. I actually went to college for acting. Well, I didn't even go for acting. I found acting in college. And then I went to New York after that as an actor. And for 2 years, I booked everything I was ever auditioning for. I was just booking it. Like, oh, this is so easy. So when my friends moved to LA because their show got picked up by Fox, I came out here to figure I'd just stay for the summer. I never left. But I found that in LA, it was a lot harder to get an audition. So back then it was like 2003 at the point where I finally said, you know what, I'm going to make my own stuff. And people weren't doing it back then. So it was really kind of easy to get a whole film crew to come out and make short films. So I created a festival where we did 5 short films. And then each sort of producer starred in there. It's like an actor producer starred in those films. And that kind of got me going on producing. But directing came when I was just finding that I wasn't being fulfilled by being in other people's stuff. I wanted to create stuff. And I think a lot of control freak type actors probably get that bug. So I directed and acted for a while, but I think it was around 2011 that I just finally was like, I don't care about acting. I could care less about memorizing lines and being on screen. And it happened in this moment where I was creating a moment where the star male lead and myself, we had this moment. And I don't know, just there's something about making that moment and pulling it off with like no crew and just like in this little web series. And that was it. I just never acted again. I just wanted to make those moments.
I would be interested to see what it would be like to act and direct. I've taken a couple of acting classes and I've learned that it's not really for me per se, but I think it's good to at least attempt something. Like if you attempt to, do audio or you attempt to direct, you don't know if you're going to be good at it or if you're going to enjoy it until you actually do it. So I give you, all the credit in the world for, branching out and doing something different. And now you've turned it into a very nice career for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, until the pandemic, I was making a living solely as a director. I had 2 feature films over $1 million that I was attached to direct that I didn't have to do anything but direct. I was like living the dream. And then like many others, the rug came out when the pandemic hit and the funding went away right away. Those people lost money in the stock market and they were out. And then it was 2 years of like, you couldn't really work. If you were higher level, you could probably get away with working, because like even TV shows, I don't know if people realize, but in TV shows, you have 23 episodes, you might have 23 directors. And they were doing a thing where they're like, we're going to do less episodes and we're going to have 4 directors and we're going to swap them out for the whole season because they were worried about COVID and all that stuff. So, it's been a very interesting, like, okay, we're getting back in business. Now what, and that's where the working director even came from. I found myself coaching people over the last year, like directors like yourself, asking me questions. And I was just like, this is something people want the answers to. And I have all this information that I can't do anything with it because I'm sitting at home waiting for the pandemic to be over. And so, that was kind of born that way.
It is crazy how you can take something that's so, widespread and overly negative like the pandemic, but it's like this old saying that I heard a long time ago, and I've kind of tried to live my life by it, that life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you respond to it. It's really what you do when this type of adversity, like with COVID, where you can't really make anything, like what can you do to hone your craft? A lot of people wrote during the pandemic, and now we're starting to see this kind of like huge surge of creativity where people are taking these scripts that they spent years perfecting because they couldn't do anything else, and now they're making it happen. And I've known friends who have started podcasts due to the pandemic just to find something to do. So I think it's good for you to take all this knowledge that you've had, and you've done a phenomenal job of conveying that knowledge, because I've checked out a few episodes of your show, and I really, really enjoy it.
Oh, yay. Thank you. Yeah, it's funny. I used to do the podcast. My podcast used to be called Intuitive Filmmaker. And I actually quit that when the pandemic hit because I didn't like doing these remote interviews. But I mean, over the last 2 years, remote interviews have become doable. The sound is better. The technology is better, which is crazy that we pushed that much in 2 years. But I was like, I didn't want to do those terrible sounds, so I quit. But with the working director, it made sense to kind of bring it back and really get into the craft and make it more specific, even like really target into like, what is it you do? You sitting across from me, and how do you do it? I don't care about your journey to get there. Tell me how I can leave this podcast and go do that thing. So I think it's been good for my brain. I mean, I don't know about you, but I joked a lot, and I'm worried that it might be true. Like, I haven't really had anything substantial. I've been directing little projects through the pandemic, but nothing substantial. And I'm like, do I even know how to do it? I don't remember what a fork is called half the time anymore. Like, I haven't been using that part of my brain. So I worry that that's gone. So like you said, we had to kind of shift and find anything we could to keep thinking and doing and working however we could.
And that was my concern too with, just wrapping up my short film, because I haven't directed anything in 3 years, not since the end of 2018. And when we got on set, I'm like, do I still know what to do? And it's one of those things that it's like, muscle memory, like it comes back as you really kind of get going and everything. So it's, it kind of is what it is. But what is it that you enjoy the most about directing? Because you said you get, the most fulfillment out of doing it, and also by teaching others. What is it about directing that is the most fulfilling to you?
For me, you will see me on set literally jumping up and down and like clapping and applauding when something happens that I dreamed in my head. I remember on a music video by Raymond Revel, One More Dance, we had my 2 little kids then. They're all grown up now, but these 2 little adorable kids on set. And I had saw in my head, like, just the way they would interact together. And when they brought it to life on screen and they fulfilled what I put out there, like literally I was jumping up and down and like clapping and giving them praise. And like, that is the norm, because there's something about, I don't know, about just making these magical moments. And then the second half is really like thinking about the audience. Now, I don't like to watch the movie with audience. I do it because it's sort of like, if it's a festival, whatever, you have to do it. But like, I don't like that part, but I do love the part where the audience is, you could feel their breath, they're holding their breath, or you could hear sobs. And what I want to do with directing is take people on a journey that literally is cathartic for them. And by the end of anything I do, it does not matter what kind of movie I make, my endings are always happy. Like, it always leaves you with a good feeling. And So that's why it's important to me. And I'm sure you feel the same way, because I know that you do more family friendly type films as well. And like, there's something about, there's enough just bad, negative crap in the world. So getting to direct things that just bring an audience joy, I just don't know what else. What else would we do that's like that? Be a therapist? I don't know.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Yeah, and I'm the same way where I also like to kind of take it a little bit farther with, you know, the two films that I've made. I like to leave things a little bit open to audience interpretation, because as someone who's been a fan of movies my entire life, I will think, and I'm sure you've had these conversations too, because I know we like a lot of the same, you know, type of movies, where you leave the theater and you're talking with your friends about what could happen after, you know, the credits have rolled. Like, where are these characters going? Like, you kind of know where they are, even if it's a definitive thing. You might think, what's going to happen with them? You know, I like, and I love audience reaction. You know, with the Parker Syndrome a couple of years ago when we had the premiere for it, I sat in the back of the room because I wanted to watch the audience reactions to when the little twists would happen and like the emotional moments would happen. Because even when I go to the movies as a fan, you feed off of that audience energy, whether it's positive or negative. You know, that's what I love about filmmaking, is getting that audience reaction. Like, it's almost its own fulfillment.
Mm-hmm. It really is. I know, like our last feature film, the last one I directed, Playing with Beethoven, we did, we actually finished it before the pandemic, but because of all of the dramas of pandemicness, we didn't get to release it until like 3 years after we finished it. So it finally, you know, got a little theatrical release. We got a premiere, and I remember being like, I don't want to be like, I don't know. I don't know how you like to do it. I don't want to be in there, even though it's like taken, maybe because it has taken so long. It's like you've spent probably anywhere from 2 to 4 to 12 years with a script to try to get it financed. You go through pre-production, you go through production, you go through a year of posting, if not more. And then here you are. And you're like, look, I just put 5 years of my life into this. And you get, you know, like if you're not crying and laughing at all the right spots. So I don't know how you can just sit there and enjoy it.
Well, there are some moments where I'm like, oh, really, like that, like they didn't have the reaction that I was hoping for, but you take the good with the bad also.
Yeah.
You know, and it's
also fun when you get a reaction that you didn't even know was a thing, and you're like, oh, okay, that was good. You know?
Or it's like you have this character that you're sure is going to be like, the audience will love them because they're funny, they're charming, and they might have a small role, but you think, oh, this will be one that will be really memorable. And then they get next to no reaction. But then something you didn't think about, the audience is like, oh, that was my favorite part of the whole movie. I'm like, oh, that's great. That's, again,
well, lesson too, though, what you're saying for any filmmakers who are watching this is that, like, you cannot control what people think about your film. So quit being precious about it. Just get it out there. Like, go make movies, go make art, put it out there, move on with your life, because you just can't determine what's going to happen. And there might be a freaking pandemic that just crushes your dreams too.
Yeah, and for the feature, you know, I wrote the first draft of it in January of 2020 with my full intent to make it maybe around the end of the year. Mm-hmm. But of course, a couple of months later, things shut down. There were a couple of small projects that were going on around here, and one that I had the chance to work on. And, you know, they went through like the proper protocols with being safe and everything. And that was kind of surreal in its own right, because in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, should we be doing this? Yeah. But it was done in the right ways, and it was with people I knew that were going to do it the right way. What exactly, like, so like during the pandemic, did you do any type of film work at all, or was it more things that you did while you were on lockdown?
Definitely didn't do much, but Chris Edgar, who is basically like one of my producing partners, and anything music, is pretty much my partner in crime for that stuff. And he writes all of our musical stuff. And So he wrote some really great songs for us to go out and record with just like him and I and maybe a couple cast members, or like us plus a DP. So we did some small things. I remember the first set though, having to wear a mask the first time. And like, it was the first time I had to be in a mask for that long, like a whole day. And, you know, you're walking upstairs or you're carrying gear. I'm like, it's rough. And like, you don't want to whine about it because you're like, I'm lucky enough to be on set doing this, but it wasn't a pleasant enough experience that I was like chasing it, I guess. I kind of was like, we'll do stuff, we'll have fun, but I just wasn't pushing for directing work those last 2 years, which I've also found that a lot of people I think have had a shift mentally, not even just people in film, like people who worked at McDonald's or whatever, right? Like people are just like, I don't need to do this crap anymore. And they realized that because they had a break from it all. Or like even how many people moved out of LA because they realized they could live anywhere and do what they were doing here for way more, like a third of the cost, and get a giant, you know, land, a house and acres of land and all that. So I think the pandemic shifted a lot for most people.
Yeah, it definitely changed things honestly forever. And that's something I've talked about almost ad nauseum on the show too, is with the advancement of technology when it comes to film. You know, like, cause you could really shoot a film with your iPhone. And if you have good sound, then you can realistically make it happen. You know, I've talked with filmmakers who live in Memphis, Tennessee, and they can make a feature there. You know, there's Atlanta, New Orleans, you know, other places, you know, all around the country and even in the world. It's the beauty of technology. And, you know, someone who lives, you know, pretty much on the other side of the country from Los Angeles, it's helpful.
Yeah. I mean, that's where when I first started doing the working director, I was like, can I only help actors in film cities? I mean, I'm sorry, directors in film cities. And I started to realize that it doesn't have to be a film city, because with what I share, what I teach in the course, it can really, like you said, it can apply to anywhere. As long as you have the drive to go out and do it, you can make it happen. So yeah, I think you're right. Like you can live anywhere, and you can just, if you're listening to this and you're in some small town and you're like, I can't do anything to live in LA, that's not true. Like you can absolutely be making stuff there and make stuff in these other places for way cheaper before you move to LA, where no one wants to help you out. Everything is more expensive. Just no.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And we're lucky here in Pensacola that we have a good film community with people who are willing, you know, to help out and do others. Like with the project I talked about that we filmed during COVID, I was a grip on that project, and the director then helped me out with my film. It's really kind of a pay it forward kind of mentality that I think you have to have, because if you show that you're willing to learn and you're willing to help others, and you may not be doing exactly what you want to do, but if you show you're willing to do anything to help out, chances are that's, you know, you put the good karma out there, it's going to come back to you.
I love that. And I think it's probably in smaller towns, it's a lot easier. I don't, not that Pensacola is like a small town, but like, you know, places outside of Atlanta and LA and Chicago and these New York, there's a lot more camaraderie. If you can build a film community around you, I feel like it's a little easier, because in LA, especially, it can be a little more isolating, a little more self-centered. Everybody's so busy doing work that it's just like, I don't know, like I think we lose out on that part of the film community, that 2003 Jenn community, where it's just like everybody wants to come out and help, and then you go help them on theirs, and you just make all these really high quality looking projects for no money. You can't really, I mean, you could still do it, but it's different now. It just, I don't know. I think enjoy Pensacola and build and keep building that community around you, because I think it's going to serve you so well.
Well, and as we talked about, you know, pretty frequently here, we had a really good, consistent meetup that we used to do here, where like once a month, a lot of the filmmakers around here would meet up at like a local brewery, talk about different projects that we'd be working on. You might get the opportunity to network and meet new people. Then when COVID happened, that derailed it. And I think we've only had like 1 to 2 since then. So I would love for stuff like that to pop up again, because I just think it's so important to still have that face-to-face connection and meet people. Like, you can meet people through Facebook or Instagram, whatever the case may be, but it doesn't replicate that face-to-face connection.
I agree so much. Like, even just now, on the Working Director Live group, TQ is somebody who I met on Facebook, and we've been talking through Facebook, but being even just the Zoom, it's like, oh, it's such a different energy. It's like, now I'm connected to you. It's so weird to think that like a little over 2 years ago, everything was you drive somewhere. Like I had to drive 3 hours to Santa Monica, which is like 20 minutes away, to do a meeting. And now I'm like, I'm not driving anywhere. Like, you gotta get on Zoom or I'm not there. But now I think we have to come out of that again, and we need to get back out. We need to start meeting people again in person and doing these networking events. That's why with Black Magic Collective, I've pushed us to be able to do a live film festival this year so that we can all get out and have a awards luncheon. I'm working on a ladies luncheon for the Working Director. Like, it's just, there's so much opportunity that like I think is missed by not being out in the world together. Says this introvert who wants to just stay in all the time.
Oh, hey, I'm right there with you. I'm an only child. I had to entertain myself with movies and television shows and didn't have a ton of friends growing up. Like, I'm just as content with sitting on my couch and watching TV, so I know what you mean. But it's ironic, though, that like I don't consider myself to be a very sociable person, yet I host a podcast, and my favorite aspect of filmmaking is the collaboration. It makes no sense, but that's how it is.
I think there's something about introverts that we need the excuse to talk to other people, because humans by nature are social beings. But introverts, we have a fear of rejection. What if we talk to somebody, they don't like us? What if they don't want to talk to us? So as a director, we're in charge. Everybody has to talk to us, even if they don't like us. So we have that connection. And like when we do the podcast, we're in charge. Like, I can throw an event and be the social butterfly. If I go to someone else's event, it takes a lot in me to go meet strangers. So I think it's just that being in charge. And that's why almost every director I know some of the big extroverts, but almost every other director I know is a total introvert. And I find that fascinating.
Kind of makes me want to do an introverted directors roundtable.
Oh, that'd be interesting. Or an introverted / like an introvert side and extrovert side, and see the difference in how people act in the world, in the film world.
Yeah, maybe get 2 introverts and 2 extroverts, and then just kind of see. I might try and make that happen.
It'd be great.
I think that'd be really fascinating. But you do bring up a good point, though, when you're the director, especially if you're an introvert, it's everything goes through you. So you have to be sociable to a degree, because people are going to come up to you with questions. They're going to come up to you with problems and various things like that. So it's just, any aspiring director, if that's something that you don't really care for or something you're not accustomed to, that's just, you kind of take the good with the bad. Like, I like directing, and I find myself more shocked the more I say it, because I would have never thought that I would direct anything until I just decided, you know what, I'm going to do it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but I'm going to do it. But then after I did, I think, because I've worked sound, I've worked camera, I've worked quite a bit of stuff on a set, but I think directing might be what I get the most fulfillment out of.
Yeah, I think that the thing about directing is most people don't realize how much you have on your shoulders when you're directing. When you first start directing, you think, I'm going to go out there and tell people what to do and make the movie that I want to make. But they don't realize that, first off, 90% of your life is trying to get to set. Either you're in pre-production, you're in funding, you're in development, you're in whatever, you're not on set. You're lucky if you have 10% of that year on set. And then when you're on set, it's not just all like, everybody doing what you want, because most of the time you don't have everybody doing what you want. You have to be very communicative, and you have to be very open to other people's ideas and collaboration. You don't have to do everybody's ideas, but you have to make everybody feel that they're important and you want them there and you want to get, especially if they're your department heads, for instance, costumes, production design, whatever, those people are going to help you make a better movie. So you're not just saying, go get me a red dress. You're saying, let's talk about her dress and why it's important and having these conversations. And I think that that might scare some newer people from trying to go out and direct, but I don't think it should. I think that it sounds like a big scary thing, but it's kind of baby steps, right? Like you just go and do the first thing and then you do the second thing and do the third thing. And you'll either like it or you'll hate it and never do it again. But I don't ever want anybody to be scared to try it if they're drawn toward it.
It can make you a better director if you do that, because everybody there, they want the film to be the best that they can. And it's also great if you're an inexperienced director to surround yourself with people who are more experienced than you, because their information will then transfer over to you and you'll remember that for future projects as you get more comfortable and you get more experience and you think, okay, well, let's, instead of, because there are some directors that, they have it in their mind how it's going to be and they don't take any collaboration or anything. And, it's their right to do that. But I told myself from the very beginning I wasn't going to be that kind of filmmaker.
Yeah. I mean, I've had my days where I've just like lost it because things are just, they're falling apart. But I think that like, if you're not flexible, you're never going to make your days, especially in indie, especially when you're first starting. But actually that's not even true. Because even when you're doing major network television, like you can't make your days if you're not flexible. You can't come in with a rigid shot list. I barely even make shot lists anymore. I'm like, I know the main things I need to get and that's it. Like, then it's like, okay, I have time for this. So I'm going to do this and this and this. I don't, because every time you go in with a shot list, it just gets thrown out the window anyway. And you've wasted all this time prepping this film. Unless you're like Ron Howard, who gets a lot of time on a film, who gets 3 to 6 months on a film. And even Ron Howard's like, probably saying he doesn't have enough time or money or whatever. I think flexibility is probably one of the most important parts of flexibility, and openness to collaboration are probably the two most important things I would say a director needs to have.
It's always great to go in with a plan, like definitely be prepared for what you want to do, but don't be afraid to, I use this analogy. If you're driving down a highway, you're going from point A to point B, you can take some detours that might be a little more scenic, that might look a little better, but you still get to point B in the end.
Mm-hmm. And you got to also remember that everybody else wants to get you to point B and make the best point B ever. So no one's trying to sabotage, which I think sometimes we get in this stress of like, just everybody shut up. I need to think. But you kind of just keep going and you come out the other side, and hopefully you have not, hopefully you still have friends in the end, and hopefully you've made a good project. I think.
That's important too. Just don't end friendships over a film. I've heard horror stories like that. Thankfully that hasn't happened to me, and hopefully it won't ever. But yeah, it's like you said, go in with a plan, but be open. You don't have to take every single suggestion that comes your way. But that's what's great, is that sometimes people will come up with ideas that are better than yours, and
Mm-hmm.
and that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And there's one thing too about, I think that beyond just making films, one thing I always encourage directors to do is to try every kind of directing. So, I mean, maybe not like things that are against your morals, but every other kind of directing, so that you know what you really want to do. And even genre wise, like I know I did a lot of genres before. I was like, I love romantic dramedies and I love musicals. And honestly, I don't always have the best time on other types of films. I would still consider them, depending on who's producing and the script and all that stuff. But really, I know what I love to do. And that's because I did so much different stuff. And it's the same thing, like in the Working Director, I teach, how to do actor reels and EPKs and music videos and short films and feature films and micro short content, like every kind of thing a director can be directing, I break down to videos, because I'm like, I want you to go try these things. And I'm telling you how to go get it and how to make it happen. And they're probably watching the video going, I don't want to do that. That's scary. But I want every director to try everything, because they don't know even if they don't want to do that thing anymore, like they don't want to ever interview a dentist again, but for a job. But guess what? Now you have that under your belt. So when you do a feature film, where in the film there's an industrial where you have to interview the dentist, or any kind of industrial within a film. Like I always talk about the Jurassic Park DNA, little DNA movie with inside the movie. It's like if you have that experience, it makes that part of your film even better, and it makes you a more well-rounded director, just because you can pull on experience, but also because I don't know. I just think that there's something about doing a little bit of everything until you find your niche, until you find the one true north. You got to kind of touch a little bit of everything. I think you found your true north, right? You do specifically, is like faith-based specifically, or what is your genre?
I'm still working on that. My first short was a drama, and then the one that I just wrapped is more of a mix of drama and comedy, which
Okay.
I think is ultimately more my wheelhouse. But I'm still relatively new to directing, and I want to try more things. Like I'm working on a script for a horror short. I'm
Okay.
working on a script for a murder mystery, which I'm really excited about. So I want to keep trying new stuff because, for exactly what you said, you don't know until you try it. Like you don't know what you don't know. And like I didn't grow up a horror fan, but I may end up enjoying it and like, hey, I want to do another one. I know I like murder mysteries because I grew up reading murder mystery books and I like murder mystery movies. So but that's what's great about doing different projects is that, like you said, you get to learn new things that, yeah, you may never use it again, but you don't know that until you do it.
Well, also, one of the best parts about doing it is you learn what you absolutely do not want to do. You learn your boundaries. You learn your boundaries as a director. You learn your boundaries as a producer. You learn your boundaries as like I'm never like me personally. I'm never doing horror again. I tried it. It was a fun experiment. I don't want to watch it. Like I'm not gonna like go make a movie that's my thing now. It's like I don't make movies that I wouldn't want to watch. And once you do find your niche, your true north, then you go directly up that line. I was talking about the line of trajectory where it's like, you, for instance, Derek, you're going to be doing a lot of random stuff as you figure this all out. But let's say you go, you know what? I know that I want to do buddy comedies. You just decide that's your life. You love it, right? You can't. What I don't want to see directors do is going, I love buddy comedies. I love buddy comedies. Oh, you're going to let me direct your web series, but for free? If it's a horror, okay. It's so far off your line of trajectory, it literally stops the momentum. But if you go, oh, well, it's a comedy, it's not really a buddy comedy, but it's a comedy, and they're going to have a lot of money invested into it, and I'm not going to get paid that much, but it can look really good on my reel, and it's still comedy. It's close enough to your line to keep you moving. And I always want everybody to think about that, because there is a point where you can waste, and I'm saying this to you because I know you're still like trying to figure it out. Like you could literally waste 10 years of your life and go, oh man, I've just been all over the place. My reel says nothing about me because it says too much. So, and then when you even go to make your reels, it's like, well, I only have one action and one horror and one drama. Like there's no symmetry at all. So even if you go, I want to do all these genres, but within the genres, I want every film to have, I don't know, like a romantic edge. I don't know, whatever it is, right?
Like a reoccurring genre, possibly.
There that's like, oh yeah, go to Derek because he is the guy who can make romance into any genre. That could be your thing, like that's so just keeping that in mind as you pursue these next films. And because as you've noticed, it takes just as much time to do the 5-minute short film as it takes to do the 13-minute short film and the 20-minute short film. It's still that much prep, that much editing, that much of your focus is taken. So I want you to put your focus on things that are going to drive you forward in a way that you're excited about.
That's a great point. I didn't think of it in that aspect, that if you have something that for a fact you want to do, you can do something that maybe is a little off the path, but maybe like right next to it, that in the end would still help. So that's a great point. Is that something that, with you doing the working director and doing all these teachings that you've done, what are some of the more common mistakes that you've seen, aspiring directors make that could easily be corrected?
The list is very long. Like just today, I had a whole live in our group about social media. Like it was mind-boggling me that I went to go look up everybody in our group and I couldn't even tell what they did. Their cover photo was just a random photo. They had no links. They had no titles for who they were. I'm like, are they a director? I can't even tell. Their posts were just random, had nothing to do with directing. And even if you haven't done a short film or any kind of directing, but you want to direct, you need to find a way to make your feed be more about directing. Like maybe you're reviewing a movie, or maybe you're saying, oh, this is the kind of movie I want to do. This scene here was amazing. Did anybody watch this movie? Continue to remind people that you are a director. That's a big, huge one. And then I would say also it's the going all over the place. It's never having a line of trajectory and knowing your true north and where you should go. We have so many videos and modules. We have 3 full modules, which each module has at least 10 videos before we even get to, okay, this is how you go direct for pay. Because we make sure your bios are in order, your marketing is in order, your socials are in order. Do you have money issues? Because if you have money issues, you're never going to ask for your rate. And then we talk about, how do you know what your rate is? Like there's so many levels that, like, I mean, it took me 20 years to learn all this. So I can't really get it figured all out in 5 minutes we have on a podcast. But I mean, I think it's really about just always thinking long-term. What is my ultimate goal? Where do I see myself? What would make my dream come true? So for me, it might be I'm on the Universal Studios lot making a big, epic, over-the-top musical with all musical genres. And I'm using up 3 sound stages. Like if I know that, then I know that everything I do should be pointing people to know that I'm a musical director for hire. So everything I do in public is hire me to do your musicals. And it works, because I will say that I had a filmmaker who I met at a film festival like 7 or 8 years ago. We had a brief interaction. We talked about our movies, and then that was it. We stayed friends on Facebook. And like last year, or I think it was last year, was it during the pandemic? Anyway, it was pandemic time. It all blends together. He randomly called and said, I have this thing for Aerosmith, and I thought of you. And so like this director who didn't want to direct this music thing thought of me, because guess what? I keep telling everybody that I'm the musical director, and freaking call me for your music stuff. So just be specific, you know?
So what you're telling me is I've got some homework to do before I do your live show.
Oh, cannot wait to put you in the hot seat, because we are going to dig into everything you're doing and could be doing on that hot seat. It's going to be great.
But no, I think that's great to have a platform to get that open, honest feedback. And a lot of people, they take honest feedback as almost being intimidating, because chances are it's not going to be, all sunshine and rainbows. Like, oh, what you're doing is perfect. Yeah, you're great. Don't change anything. Don't try and be better.
Not like even I have that. If we really break down my stuff, it's like, Jen, you're spending way too much time on the course funnel and not enough time on the script that you need to be doing. Like not everybody's perfect, but at least if we have a guide, then if we get off track, we can know it. Like I know there's a constant nagging, like you need to be working on that script. You got to go do that script, because I know that that's the next on the list. And so if you don't have that direction though, that script you just forget about. It just sits in a drawer, because it doesn't matter, because it only matters is this one thing I'm working on right now. But yeah, we're going to have fun. Well, I will.
No, I always tell people, like, if there's a way that I can be better at something, like even with this podcast, I have people who will listen to it, and I say, if there's a way I can improve it, let me know how I can improve it, because I want it to be the best that it can possibly be. Like, I don't want a podcast that everybody thinks, oh, that show sucks, I don't want to listen to it. Same thing with movies,
Podcasters. Everybody hates me. No one wants to listen to this show.
It's funny, to kind of deviate for a second, we were talking about bad sound quality before COVID. For those who are longtime podcasters or content creators, you remember the days of Skype and trying to do shows and videos through that, and it was just impossible. Like you'd have to get a third-party software to even record the call, and half the time it wouldn't work. I lost numerous interviews because of that, and now we have Zoom, and it's great.
Well, and beyond, like we use StreamYard, and it's like they've made going live, it's like you're doing a whole network show within a few buttons on your computer. It's so crazy how much technology has just opened up the world for us.
I've never used StreamYard, but I've heard good things about it. One day I do hope to try it.
I think they have a free version. You should just try it for fun. I don't
Yeah.
know. There's
No,
so
no.
many now. Like, I mean, Riverside has its advantages and disadvantages. Streamer has its advantages, disadvantages. Zoom, I don't even try. I don't know how you do it.
Just used to it, I guess.
But you make it look good. Like it's all like, you got your border and you've got great sound and I don't know. And going live itself is I don't think people watching understand that. Or if you're listening to this podcast as a replay, like going live as a podcaster is nerve wracking because you're trying to be calm and collected as the host, which Derek comes off as, but inside you're like, okay, are we on time? Are we moving? How's the time? I got to put up this card. I got to flip back to her. Like it's insanity.
The first live show I did back in May, I had a little cheat sheet because I have things set to hotkeys through OBS. So I'm like, okay, that's to play the intro music, that's to play the outro music, so it's just getting that repetition in your head. It's just like everything. But no, I appreciate the compliments. No, it's fun to do live shows because you almost get that. It's almost like working without a safety net, and you can get questions from the audience if they want to ask. So it just adds a whole new layer to it. And pre-recorded, is still fine. And it's funny mentioning Zoom. I haven't actually done an in-person version of my podcast since before COVID. They've all been strictly through Zoom. Even people who are local.
Yeah. It's weird. It's just changed everything. It's how we operate different as a society now. But luckily we have the technology to do it. But also everybody is now a podcaster. Like we always, my husband and I, we have the Nerd Couple show together, and we're always joking because there'll be some new celebrity, like some celebrity has no reason to have a podcast. They're so famous it doesn't even matter. And it's like, oh, they have a podcast. Of course, everybody has a podcast. Like it just every day there's a new celebrity who has a podcast among the rest of us who are non-celebrities who continue to create podcasts. I'm in a group for the Grow the Show, which is a group that helps. It's an organization that helps filmmakers sort of hone in on their niche and grow it and whatever. And I swear to you, and the program is not cheap. And every day, at least one new person is in the group. Like, I'm new here. I'm just like, oh my God, there's so many people podcasting now.
I'm in that same group, so no, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, I've
connected.
I'm trying to. I want to say I found your working director Facebook group, and then I joined it because you saw my my wedding pictures where our wedding party did the the Avengers poses and everything. And then after that I was and I did more research on you, and I'm like, she would be a great guest for the show.
Oh, it's so funny how the world is so small. Like the fact that we're in probably 3 different groups together and you live in Pensacola and I live in Los Angeles. Like the world is so small. That's one thing I want everybody to remember too. Especially as you're going to try to make work as a director, which, I'll continue to be on Derek about, and we'll see how Pensacola goes. But there's always somebody who can hire you. And that's how I stayed working as a director for, however many years it's been, 10 years probably now. That's how you stay working as a director. There's always somebody who can hire you, and there's always somebody who is paying attention, who's watching you. So never do anything that you think, if you ever put a thing on social that you're ranting, if you need to rant, but then delete it. Get it off, because I'm telling you, people are watching you and you don't even know it.
No, you're absolutely right. I still say, and I've said this for years, there should be an option if someone posts something, especially on Twitter, because I've noticed the worst rants come from Twitter. There should be a don't send button where you pretend to send it, but then it deletes it, essentially.
That's hilarious.
Because once it's out there,
everything you're saying to be like, no, this is okay to send. Go.
Because once it's out there, if it's for a few minutes or even 30 seconds, chances are somebody's seen it. And if it's offensive enough, they're going to screen cap it. That's the culture we live in, is that everyone is watching. Someone is always watching what you're posting, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
if you're constantly posting, like you're sharing your community, like you're sharing other directors' work, and you're very excited that you're sharing it, and you're sharing what you're doing, and you're just always a positive person. Like, even if you don't, it's not about faking being positive on social. It's just about putting out in the world what you want to get back. And if you're always doing that, I'm going to pay attention and I'm going to follow you more. And I'm most likely, those are people I'm going to hire. And trust me when I tell you, I give directors work all the time, at least pre-pandemic. I was just like, I don't want to do that. I'm too old for that now. Let me give one of my directors who are hungry, and then you get the call. You get the call to go out and do it because I'm thinking about how lovely of a human you are. Now, my hope is that you're not being lovely as a human on social and you're actually a horrible human behind the scenes. But I also think we can tell that too, if that's the case.
Yeah, people are more easily readable than a lot of people might expect. Because I'm the way I've always worked is that people do give off a vibe. Like, people give off their true vibe, whether they realize it or not. If there's someone that there are people, like, I can walk into a room and instantly I'm like, nope, can't do it. I mean, I hate to say that, but it's the truth. But then there are some that give off a good vibe. You're like, hey, I want to work with this person. Back in 2019. So the same filmmaking group that I mentioned before, we would also do workshops every month. Like, one might be on producing, one might be on acting, directing. There was this guy I met, and I'll give him a shout out. His name's Thomas Rochester. He's a local actor. He walked in, long blonde hair, Hawaiian shirt, halfway unbuttoned, just chest hair spilling out, wearing cargo shorts. And I'm like, I want to know this guy. And he played one of the comic relief characters in my movie, and he was phenomenal. And we've been friends ever since because we like a lot of the same movies. We have a lot of the same viewpoints on the industry. So it's just you never know who you're going to connect with. But it was just like instant good vibe.
Love it. That's great. Oh. And it's also, it's as introverts, we get drained. We get drained doing this. We get drained going to outings, to networking. So, like, I'm exhausted, but this was fun. I really appreciate that, not only being on your show, but I appreciate that you have such professionalism around the whole thing, in your artwork, and your setup, and your sound. Like, I've done a lot of podcasts with people that I can't say the same thing, and I kept swearing off of doing other people's podcasts. So, but I'm glad that I did yours, and you're bringing me back in the world to, like, okay, maybe I'll do them.
Absolutely. No, this was great. And I did want to ask, as we start to wrap up, do you have any website, social media that you'd like to plug so the viewers and listeners can follow you?
Sure. I'm everywhere as a Jenn Page Film, Jenn with 2 N's. That's all my socials. And JennPage.com. But I really think that any directors who are ready to be working paid directors, if you haven't gotten your first paycheck yet, but you've directed some stuff, definitely come join our emerging directors working to become paid directors Facebook group. It's called The Working Director. If you go to theworkingdirector.pro, you can find that. You can find out more in the accelerator. But this group, I'm trying to grow this community so that no matter where you're in the world, you have support and you have resources, and I'm doing some kind of training every week. So I really love to see more budding directors, not even budding, like advanced directors as well. We love having you in there because you get to share as well and help the directors out. So come join us.
No, it's great. I highly recommend it as well. I always end the interviews with this: favorite movie of all time.
Love Actually.
You're one of the few people who just immediately know. That people are like, oh, you can't ask me that because the answer changes every day. So no, good choice.
I'm like, I'm so just nothing changes for me. It's actually sad that there's no new movie that has actually gotten in as my favorite movies. Like the Twilight series is new to me of the past year, but it's still old and it's become in my top 5, the whole series, but like Lost Boys, like I can't even think, Jerry Maguire. I don't have any new movies, but Love Actually it has everything as an audience member, as a director. It literally has everything I could ever want in a movie. So it's my fave.
I dig it. No, that's a good choice. But Jenn, thank you so much for taking the time to do the show, and I look forward to sitting on the hot seat and learning more from you.
I may not be this nice. No, just playing. Thank you, Derek.
Oh, awesome. All right, we'll go ahead and play our music here. If you want to subscribe to the show, just head over to linktree.com/featureprezpod. You can find podcast subscriptions, social media links, and don't forget we're live every Monday night on YouTube at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. That's going to do it for this week's show. Be sure to come back next week for another fun episode of Feature Presentation with Derek Diamond. And we're out.